4 million years ago, Earth was not the planet we know today. It looked familiar. Trees, rivers, skies, but it felt like a different world entirely. It was quieter, wilder, more primal. This was a planet untouched by modern humanity. No language, no fire, no civilization. Only nature, raw and eternal. But even in this silence, something ancient was stirring. We were about to arrive. Enter the Pliocene. This period, known as the Pliocene epoch, stretched from 5.3 million years ago to 2.6 million years ago. It was a time of global cooling, shrinking forests, and expanding grasslands. Africa was changing, and with it, life began to adapt in strange and powerful ways. In the heart of this transformation, our earliest ancestors began their quiet emergence. Among the many species living during this time, one group was beginning to stand out: Australopithecines. They weren't quite human, but they weren't fully ape either. They walked upright. That simple act, standing on two legs, was revolutionary. It freed their hands, expanded their horizons, and set the foundation for every human step that would follow. As the African forests receded and open savannas grew, apes who once climbed through trees now had to survive on the ground. This new terrain demanded new behaviors: seeing predators from a distance, traveling farther for food, carrying young on the move. Natural selection sculpted bodies to fit the land: straighter spines, stronger legs, more efficient movement. Walking wasn't just a biological change, it was a cultural one. In 1974, a partial skeleton was found in Ethiopia. We called her Lucy. She lived more than 3.2 million years ago. She could walk, not just a little, but fully upright. Lucy belonged to Australopithecus afarensis, one of several species that marked the dawn of hominins. Other relatives, like Australopithecus onamensis and Canthropus platyops, were part of a broader evolutionary tapestry, a family of early humans taking their first steps on a long road. They were still vulnerable, still hunted, but they had something no other creature on Earth had: potential. Life was not easy. No shelters, no weapons, only instinct, strength, and an emerging sense of problem solving. But even then, the earliest signs of human creativity were taking shape. Simple tools: stones to break nuts, sticks to dig for insects. These weren't yet inventions, but they were improvisations, the very beginnings of technology. Tool use wasn't yet our identity, but it would be. We often romanticize evolution, but the truth is darker. For every ancestor who survived, there were dozens who didn't. Entire species lived for hundreds of thousands of years before going extinct without a trace. There was no straight line to us, just experiments, successes, failures. Evolution is not kind. It simply is. What mattered was adaptability, and our ancestors, slowly but surely, were learning to adapt. And then, something new. Not language, not fire, but thought. The ability to plan, to remember, to choose. We may never know exactly when it started, but in the eyes of these early hominins, something had changed. They were not just surviving, they were starting to understand. The spark of humanity had been lit. Faint, fragile, but real. And so, beneath African skies, millions of years ago, a journey began. A journey shaped by dust, danger, and time. There were no empires, no names, only bones, footprints, and echoes. But those echoes still reach us today, in our walk, our hands, our thoughts. This was the beginning.
For the first time in Earth's history, stone was not just part of the landscape, it became a tool of intention. Sharp flakes were chipped from river rocks and used to butcher meat, scrape hides, or dig through tough roots. These tools, known as Oldowan technology, were basic, but they were a beginning. These weren't just accidental discoveries, they were shared, imitated, passed on. In those crude stones lay the foundation for every human tool that would follow, from the spear to the smartphone. Homo habilis was still vulnerable, still hunted by beasts larger and stronger, but they had an edge: foresight, planning, memory. Tools were their equalizer, and in a world of predators, that mattered. But life was far from easy. Africa was still a wild and dangerous place, dominated by massive carnivores, giant hyenas, saber-toothed cats, and prehistoric crocodiles. Homo habilis and their relatives were not the kings of this world. They were scavengers first, hunters second. Often they would follow the kills of other predators, waiting until the danger passed before moving in to claim scraps of flesh and marrow. But they learned fast. Bones left behind by lions were broken open with stones to extract the nutrient-rich marrow. Skulls were split for brains. This was not just instinct, it was strategy. Meat wasn't just food, it was fuel for the brain. And the brain, slowly, steadily, was growing. Around 2 million years ago, a new species took the stage. Taller, leaner, smarter, more dangerous. Homo erectus. They were the first truly human-like beings. Their brains were nearly double the size of Australopithecus, their bodies were built for endurance, and their minds were hungry for more. And unlike any species before them, Homo erectus began to move. Out of Africa, they traveled into unfamiliar lands, across rivers, valleys, and mountains. They reached Asia, Europe, possibly even islands. They adapted to cold, to heat, to scarcity. They didn't just survive the world, they spread through it. They were no longer confined to a single region. The human story was becoming global. Then came one of the most important moments in human history: fire. Whether they first discovered it from lightning strikes, volcanic eruptions, or spontaneous sparks, one thing was clear: Homo erectus learned to harness it. And when they did, everything changed. Fire brought warmth during cold nights. It kept predators at bay. It allowed them to cook meat, making it easier to chew and digest, unlocking more calories for their ever-growing brains. But fire did more than feed and protect. It created community. For the first time, early humans could gather around a flame, talk, plan, bond. Stories may have been born here, not yet in words, but in gestures, in memory, in shared experience. Fire was more than a tool. It was a symbol of knowledge, of power, of permanence.
About 800,000 years ago, in the cold forests of Europe and Western Asia, a new kind of human was taking shape, stockier, stronger, built for survival in the cold. These were the Neanderthals, Homo neanderthalensis. They weren't our ancestors, not exactly, more like distant cousins, but they were undeniably human. And for hundreds of thousands of years, they were the dominant hominins in Europe. Long before modern humans ever stepped foot there, Neanderthals were survivors of the Ice Age. The world they lived in was brutal, swinging between glacial cold and brief warming periods. Food was scarce, shelter was crucial, the environment unforgiving. And yet, they thrived. Their bodies adapted. Wide rib cages, short limbs, powerful muscles like living tanks evolved for endurance and heat retention. Their noses were broad, likely to warm the icy air before it reached their lungs. But what made them truly remarkable was their mind. They hunted in coordinated groups. They built fires, crafted tools that were more advanced than those of Homo erectus using the so-called Mousterian technology. They were no longer just surviving. They were engineering their survival. For a long time, Neanderthals were seen as brutish and dumb, a dead end in human evolution. But new evidence tells a very different story. They buried their dead. We've found Neanderthal graves, deliberate placements of bodies, sometimes with tools or animal bones nearby. Was it ritual? Okay. Was it mourning? We may never know for sure. But it was something. They made ornaments, pierced shells, colored pigments. They may have painted their bodies, or even the walls of caves. This wasn't just intelligence. It was expression. It was emotion. It was culture. While Neanderthals were building fires in the icy forests of Europe, something else was happening back in Africa. A new species of human was rising, slender, long-limbed, built for distance running in the heat. They had rounder skulls, flatter faces, smaller jaws, and much larger brains than anything that had come before. They were us, Homo sapiens. And somewhere between 300,000 and 200,000 years ago, our story officially began. But we weren't alone. Not yet. Around 100,000 years ago, small bands of Homo sapiens began to leave Africa. They crossed rivers, followed herds, adapted to climates their ancestors had never known. They reached the Middle East, then Europe, Asia, and eventually much later Australia and the Americas. Wherever they went, they encountered others. The Neanderthals in Europe, the Nisavans in Asia, possibly Homo floresiensis in Indonesia, Homo luzonensis in the Philippines. The world was full of other humans. It's a haunting thought, multiple kinds of humans, walking the same earth, looking into the same firelight. What did they think when they saw each other? Did they fear, fight, or something more? The truth is, we didn't just replace the Neanderthals. We interbred with them. Their DNA lives on inside us 2 to 4% in many people of European and Asian descent. The same is true for the Denisovans in parts of Southeast Asia and Oceania. We weren't completely separate. We were compatible. There may have been conflict, but there was also connection. And yet, within a few thousand years of our arrival in Europe, the Neanderthals were gone, extinct. Not because they were inferior, but because we were more adaptable. We hunted more efficiently, traded better, lived in larger, more connected groups. We thought differently, and in the end, it was culture, not brute strength, that allowed Homo sapiens to outlast them. It's around this time that the first real evidence of imagination appears. In a cave in South Africa, we find ochre blocks engraved with crosshatch pattern symbols that had no practical use. They were marks for meaning. In the caves of France and Spain, images of bison, lions, and horses are painted in vivid detail. Some over 30,000 years old. Why paint? Why carve? Why sing? Because something inside us needed to. Symbolism had arrived. The human mind had evolved not just to solve problems, but to dream. The Neanderthals disappeared around 40,000 years ago. So did the Denisovans, the hobbits, the others. The age of many humans gave way to the age of one, us. We spread across every continent. We hunted giant beasts to extinction, us. We shaped the land. We tamed fire, rain, animals, even each other. Okay. But we were not the beginning. We were the last survivors of a long and messy journey. And though the others are gone, their legacy lives on in our DNA, our bones, our blood. We carry them inside us. The Earth of 4 million years ago is gone. The creatures, the climate, the silent sit, all belongs to the past. But that world shaped us, molded us, breathed life into the first spark of human thought. We are the product of an ancient gamble, one that took millions of years, countless lives, endless trials. And though we now live in skyscrapers, speak in digital tongues, and dream of stars, we are still, in many ways, those same creatures gathered around the fire, still asking the same questions, still searching for where we came from. By 40,000 years ago, the Earth belonged to Homo sapiens. But it wasn't just that we had spread across the continents. It wasn't just tools, hunting, or fire. Something deeper had awakened. The human mind, once shaped purely by survival, was now reaching beyond necessity. We began asking questions no animal had ever needed to ask. Who are we? Why are we here? What happens when we die? We were no longer just a species. We were becoming a story. Around this time, humans began leaving marks that had no purpose except meaning. Handprints on cave walls. Painted animals that seemed to run with life. Carvings of women, of beasts, of gods. We created idols, not just tools. We buried our dead with flowers, beads, and offerings. Not just because we could, but because we felt something. Grief, memory. We became spiritual. This wasn't religion as we know it, but it was the seed of belief, the idea that life extended beyond the body, that the unseen had power, that the universe had meaning. We stared into the darkness, and imagined light. As the Ice Age ended, glaciers retreated, oceans rose, forests and deserts shifted, but humans remained. We adapted, again building homes, forming communities, shaping nature itself to serve us. We domesticated animals, we cultivated plants. We began to stay in one place. Villages appeared, then towns, then civilizations. The earth, once vast and mysterious, began to shrink beneath our ambition. And still, the memory of that ancient world echoed within us. The fear of the dark, the rhythm of fire, the call of distant places. We carried our past with us, even as we outran it. Then came language, not just sounds, but structure, rules, names. We could now preserve ideas across generations, share lessons, sing songs, tell stories that reached far beyond the firelight. And eventually, we began to write. With writing came history. For the first time, memory could outlive memory. The dead could speak. The past could be recorded. The long, prehistoric night gave way to a dawn of human civilization. And yet, that night lasted far longer than anything that followed. Most of our time on Earth has been spent as wanderers, hunters, storytellers without script, children of the wilderness. We are not far from those roots. The way we fear the dark, the way we gather, the way we long to belong. These are not recent inventions. They are echoes of ancestors who stood under stars with no names, who looked up at the sky and wondered what it all meant, who walked across a dangerous planet, step by step, into the unknown. We are the children of survivors. It's the last branch of a tangled tree. And though we call ourselves modern, though we hold the world in our hands, our blood remembers a time before time. What defines us? Not our weapons, not our wealth, not even our inventions. It's the mind, the ability to imagine what does not yet exist, to tell stories, to weep for those we've lost, to stand before the unknown and reach toward it anyway. It began with a footstep on dry soil, a stone held in a curious hand, a fire burning in the dark. From that came everything. We rose not by dominance, but by understanding, by dreaming, by connecting. And that is what makes us human. 4 million years ago, Earth was a different planet. The sky was the same, but the silence was deeper. The wind, untouched. The night, absolute. We were not there yet. But the planet was already shaping us, calling us forth, forging us through challenge, extinction, and chance. We did not conquer this world. We emerged from it. The Earth does not belong to us. We belong to it. We are its memory, its witness, its voice. And we carry that legacy forward with every word we speak, every fire we light, every story we tell. Final words. So the next time you look at your hands, know that they once grasped stone. The next time you feel the warmth of fire, remember, it was once our only shield. And the next time you wonder who we are, know this. We are the last breath of a world that no longer exists. We are the children of the planet before memory. We are human.